The Hive. It had been a good week. Work was steady. My wife and I had finally cleared out the garage, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could relax. Even the weather seemed to be on my side, warm, breezy days that made sitting on the back porch feel like a vacation. I first noticed the buzzing while mowing the lawn. It was faint, like a fly had gotten too close to my ear. I swatted at it and kept going, figuring it was just one of the dozens of insects out enjoying the weather. But that night, as I lay in bed, the buzzing came back. It wasn't loud, more like the faint hum of an electrical appliance in another room. My wife didn't notice it, but for me, it was impossible to ignore. I thought maybe I'd gotten some water trapped in my ear while showering, so I tipped my head to the side and jiggled my earlobe, but nothing came out. "Everything okay?" my wife asked, her voice muffled by the book she was reading. "Yeah," I said, though my fingers lingered near my ear. "Just a weird sound." She shrugged and went back to her book, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, I woke up with a strange itch behind my ear. At first, I figured it was a mosquito bite. I scratched at it absent-mindedly while brushing my teeth, but the more I scratched, the worse it got. By the time I left for work, my skin was raw and tender. The buzzing was still there, too, faint, persistent, and impossible to pinpoint. I tried to drown it out with the radio in the car, but no matter how loud I turned the volume, it lingered, a constant drone that seemed to burrow deeper into my head. By the third day, I was a wreck. The buzzing was louder now, and the itch had spread. The skin behind my ear felt lumpy, almost swollen, and my fingers came away slick with something wet when I touched it. My wife insisted I see a doctor. The urgent care clinic smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. I sat on the exam table, tapping my foot as the doctor peered into my ear with a tiny flashlight. "Well," he said after a long pause, "I do see something in there. Might be a bug that crawled in during the night. It happens more often than you'd think." "A bug?" I said, my voice rising. "Nothing to worry about. We'll flush it out." The nurse brought in a syringe filled with saline, and the doctor tilted my head to the side. The sensation was cold and strange, like waterboarding but gentler. And then, suddenly, there was movement. I felt it before I saw it, the sharp, scuttling scrape of something pulling free from my ear canal. I gagged as the doctor held up a pair of tweezers, pinching the legs of a tiny black insect. It was a wasp. "That's probably all of it," he said, dropping the insect into a small container. "But let's do one more rinse, just in case." The second rinse pulled out 3 more. I didn't even make it to the parking lot before I started hyperventilating. I could still feel them crawling in my ear, even though the doctor swore I was fine. I wasn't fine. That night, I woke up to the sound of buzzing, louder this time, so loud it rattled my skull. My wife was still asleep beside me, oblivious, but I couldn't take it anymore. I stumbled into the bathroom and flicked on the light. The man staring back at me in the mirror didn't look like me. His skin was pale, clammy, with dark circles under his eyes and dried blood crusted behind his ear. I reached up to touch the swollen area, and that's when I felt something move. It wasn't just an itch this time. It was crawling. I pressed down on the lump, and it wriggled beneath my fingers. My breath came in shallow gasps as I grabbed a pair of tweezers and positioned them over the lump. "Just get it out," I whispered, though my hands were trembling too much to do anything precise. I pressed harder, and the skin split open. Yellowish pus oozed out, followed by something wriggling. A tiny white larva. More followed. They spilled out onto the counter, dozens of them, writhing and squirming like maggots in a carcass. I couldn't look away, even as my stomach churned. I thought I had rid myself of them, but when I finally stepped back, I noticed the lumps were spreading, down my neck, over my chest, and along my arms. That was 2 nights ago. At first, I thought I'd stopped it. After scraping the larvae out of my neck, I convinced myself it was over. I cleaned the sink, flushed the tiny writhing bodies down the drain, and bandaged the wound. My wife never asked what happened. She'd learned not to push when I got like this. Quiet, withdrawn, distant. I told myself I was protecting her. But the buzzing never stopped. If anything, it was louder, angrier. By the next morning, the itching was unbearable. I avoided looking in the mirror. Every time I caught my reflection, I saw new changes. My skin was pale and waxy, the lumps spreading like hives across my arms and chest. A strange smell clung to me, sickly sweet and sour at the same time, like something rotting. I told my wife I had a stomach bug and stayed home from work. The truth was, I couldn't bear the thought of being around other people. I could feel them inside me now, not just in my ear or my neck, but everywhere. I sat in the bathroom for hours, staring at my arms. Every so often, the lumps would twitch. It was subtle, like the faintest ripple beneath the skin, but it was enough to make me sick. I scratched until my nails broke the surface, leaving raw, bloody streaks behind. That night, I locked the bathroom door again. My wife knocked a couple of times, her voice soft with concern, but I told her to go to bed. She didn't argue. It was worse now. The buzzing wasn't just in my ears, it was in my head, vibrating in my skull. My vision blurred at the edges, and when I finally dared to look in the mirror, I saw them. Tiny black legs pressed against the inside of my skin, distorting the surface as they moved. My chest heaved as I stumbled back, the air thick and cloying. They weren't just beneath my skin, they were in my veins, crawling through my body like it was theirs. The pain came suddenly, sharp and deep in my stomach. I doubled over, clutching the sink for support. Something was moving inside me, pushing against my ribs, clawing its way up. I staggered to the bathtub and collapsed on my knees. My breathing came in ragged gasps as I clawed at my chest. The lumps there were swelling, stretching the skin thin. I felt something wet running down my sides, and when I looked down, I saw it wasn't just sweat. It was yellowish, sticky, like honey mixed with blood. The pressure built until I couldn't take it anymore. I screamed as the skin on my chest split open. They poured out of me. Hundreds of them, tiny black wasps with glistening wings and twitching antennae. They swarmed the bathroom, buzzing so loudly it drowned out my cries. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't hold me. I slipped in the puddle of blood and whatever else was spilling out of me, landing hard on my back. I looked up at the ceiling, my vision blurring. The wasps were everywhere now, covering the mirror, the walls, the light. Their buzzing wasn't chaotic anymore. It was purposeful, organized. They weren't panicking. They were leaving. I don't know how long I lay there, watching them fly out through the crack beneath the bathroom door. My body felt hollow, like they'd taken everything with them. My skin hung loosely, my limbs limp and useless. When the last one was gone, the room fell silent. The buzzing was finally gone, but so was I. I can feel it even now, the emptiness inside me where they used to be. They've moved on, found new places to infest, new bodies to make into hives, and I'm still here, nothing but a shell, waiting for them to come back.